everyone. My name's Adam. I've been a design engineer with HBK for a little bit over going on 4 years now. And I'm here today with Randy and Bob. And we're going to talk to you about engineering and sensors and a few questions around those. Randy, Bob, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Thanks a lot, Adam. Yeah, I'm Randy Hopkins. I've been with the former HBM, now HBK, for 33 years. Started off in design and development, just like yourself, and it's kind of moved along in my career and taken on more of a leader for our business unit for OEM Sensors.
And I'm Bob Chevalier. I've been with the company for 20 years, just after the internet was invented, before cell phones, pager time. And I'm director of OEM sensor sales, and have been working with Randy this whole time to help build this group and get these strain gauges into as many applications as possible.
I think that's a big driver. They call this the information age. Everybody wants to know more about everything. And now we're getting to the point, we've already dumped all the information about ourselves out on the internet through Facebook and other social media sites. And now we're starting to gather information about the world. And we have the ability, back in Archimedes' time, I'm sure somebody was sitting down there with a rock and a ruler trying to figure out how hard things could bend. And now we have more information about that more precisely. And I think it's really started to help that it's bleeding into education. I know the first time I ever heard of strain gauges, my entire life, was in the middle of a college course about the strength of materials. And we weren't using it for any real application. It was, we're sitting there with these old dog bones on a big Instron testing machine, and we're supposed to figure out how much force it needs to rip apart this dog bone, but they want us to measure it first. That was the first time I ever saw them. So what was the first time you guys ever saw strain gauges and had interactions with them? Is it the same way as it was for me back in schooling? And
yeah, I still remember doing that test on the specimen in college and yanking the thing apart. It pops, it breaks. You're like, oh, cool. And then you're looking at your output, and we had to do the stress strain, diagram. We had to, basically do all your basic Young's modulus plots and stuff. In terms of going through, we all take that course. And I want to say that's probably our first education or use of a strain gauge. And I can tell you, if I go back to that lab I was in, I still remember that specimen, taking and pulling it apart. If I could ever tell you, I'd be sitting here, 40 something years later, working with strain gauges, doing sensors. No way. There's no way I would have ever predicted that.
I remember that one really well. I think that, at least for me, that course sticks so well in my brain because it was one of the only courses that we did where you're actually doing something. It's not too hard to go and take a $5 dog bone and rip it apart in the middle of a lab. Any teacher can get approval for that, but you're not going to go out and work in a wind tunnel or.
Yeah. I still remember the professor that ran that lab. He didn't let any of us put the strain gauges down. I mean, he came over and he's like, all right, I made these specimens for you guys to pull. He goes, I know how to put these down. And I think back now and I'm like, oh my God, there's my first expert in strain gauges, and I didn't even realize it.
My experience was a little different because I didn't have, in chemistry, we took physics class and we did collisions. And we got to glue them down, but we weren't allowed to. I'll never forget the professor, don't diddle with the equipment. And we just smashed the cars together and watched the reading of the impact. And again, that was it. So when you mentioned the word dog bone, my first real experience was showing up at HBM, and they were talking about beam load cells. And I'm going, wow, they're measuring deflection with laser beams. That is so cool. And they go, no, it's a metal beam. I'm like, oh no. And it's got a dog